everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Small Business Breakthroughs. We have a exciting topic on taking inventions and products and commercializing these products and taking them to the market and taking the licensing. We have a lot of stuff here today. We'll try to go through, and I think everybody will really learn some things today because this should be really a good program. My name is Mike Bowers. I am the Director of the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. Small Business Development Center works with entrepreneurs all the way from I have an idea, that's all I have, to, I've been in business for a while and, I'm looking to do some new stuff, or, looking to get funding or whatever. We provide advising services. Those are free of charge to the user. And we also provide a variety of training programs to help you move through the process quicker and get your business up, running, growing, and taking off. So we are excited today to talk about this. I want to also bring in our co-partner on this, the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, Chaz Fertel. Chaz, hope you're doing good today, and we want to talk a little bit about some of the cool stuff at the deck.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I always appreciate being next to you. Not right next to you, but next to you on a Zoom screen is fine. Yeah, hey, it's 60 degrees today and looking beautiful in Central Ohio. So how can we complain? But we love the opportunity to share with folks around Central Ohio or wherever kind of the same similarities as Small Business Development Center. Been a partner with you all in the deck ever since it launched in 2009, and we're excited just to continue those partnerships and you being around at the deck to meet with people as well as others on your staff, and the events that we do together, and just the many businesses we've been able to help over the years to be more successful and launch some new ideas. So we're always excited to do great partnerships with you all. But we're proud of what's going on at the deck. Now been in business there since 2009. I've graduated over 180 businesses that have gone through the deck. Our statistics still show that over 90% of the businesses that have graduated from the deck are still in business, which is we're so proud of that and fantastic of how those businesses have been successful. And a lot of that is due to our partnerships with so many organizations like SBDC that come alongside us and help those businesses to get started right and just continue to grow on the right path. But one of the big things that people come to us to is we have office space and drop-in space, which are called hotspots and things like that. And we don't nickel and dime anybody with any extra charges for renting conference rooms or Wi-Fi or anything like that. It's all inclusive. And so right now, we've got about 130 businesses at the deck. Very proud of those companies and the success that they're having. And so we always just like to promote not only the services that we provide, but certainly we have space that folks can come and use as their home base for their businesses 24/365 throughout the year. And we're very affordable, sponsored by the city of Dublin. So excited to be a part of the event today and looking forward to hearing from my friend Jeff, and my daughter's actually looking to develop a product right now, and nobody better than him in Central Ohio to listen to about bringing a product to market. So look forward to hearing what Jeff has to share and the questions you have for him.
Great, thank you, Chaz. Chaz will put his information in the chat, and if you have questions, the website is deckindublin.com. Go ahead and hit that. You can reach out to Chaz, and he and the individuals on his team will talk to you about what the deck has that kind of fits your situation. So be sure to reach out to them and check out their opportunities. I do want to mention two events that we've got coming up. Next week is Small Business Week for the Small Business Administration, the SBA. Small Business Week has been going on for a number of years, and it's a great opportunity to highlight, recognize the work and the accomplishments of small businesses and small business owners across the country. And here in Central Ohio, we will be having a special edition of Small Business Breakthroughs that will be on Monday at 11:30. You can go to our website and register for that if you'd like. We will have Lisa Hudson, who is the director of the Small Business Development Center at Lorain Community College, Brad Bapst, who is the director of the Ohio SBDC at OSU South Centers. And we will have Mike Stater, who is the director of the Ohio SBDC at Warren County. And we will also have Jerome Jones, who is with the Small Business Administration here in the Columbus District office. And we're going to be talking about, our experience working with individuals, how things kind of are a little bit different and how they do different things in different areas. And I think it'll be really cool because, again, we're going to be bringing in a lot of perspectives from all around the state of Ohio. The Small Business Development Center has like 26 centers here in the state of Ohio, and we actually have close to 1,000 centers around the country. So we are excited to be able to bring some different perspectives to Small Business Breakthroughs for Small Business Week. Also, for Small Business Week, we have a special edition of our Small Business Spotlight with Jeff White, who is an archaeologist and owner of Archaeology Can You Dig It? That will be on Thursday, May 4th at 12:30. Bruce Walters from our team will be moderating that. And Bruce, do you want to share anything about that program?
Yes, this is a new series we started in February, I believe it is. So each month we focus on a SBDC client. And the aim here is to try to give new business owners an idea of what's involved in starting and running their own small business. So we're just striving to have a variety of businesses for us to explore. So as Mike said, that May event will be with Jeff White of Archaeology Can You Dig It? So Jeff is a trained archaeologist and has worked in research all over the United States. And now he's offering archaeology training for area school children. So that's be really interesting. If you want more information on that or any of those two series of events, just reach out to me. Everybody should have my email address, and I will share that information with you. So, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, that should be a really cool program, because what we try to do with that program is we try to say, okay, we're going to bring in entrepreneurs, folks that work with the SBDC, and they can share perspectives of their journey along the way. And, many of them, are exactly where you are or sat where you are along the way. So it should be exciting. We're looking forward to that. And we hope that you guys can join us on both those programs for Small Business Week next week. We are going to go through the program today. We are going to actually use a product commercialization roadmap. If you have registered for this, you should have actually received an email with the roadmap. If you do not have it, feel free to put your information, your email address into the chat. Bruce will pull that down and we'll send you the document. So I want to go ahead and get started here. We've got a lot to cover. And as I said, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But want to introduce my friend, Jeff Shick. Jeff and I have known each other for a long time. Jeff has extensive experience in product commercialization, and he has worked with, a variety of federal labs. He's actually worked with our SBDC, running our Manufacturing SBDC for several years, and he worked for the state of Ohio in their Manufacturing Extension Partnership program. So, Jeff, thanks for joining us. I don't know if you have anything you want to add about your illustrious career.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be with you again. It's been too long since we've seen each other in person. The state of Ohio is really an awesome place for anybody who wants to be in business. So I'm going to take a minute or two and give you a summary that relates to some of my experiences, but also to what I've observed in the state of Ohio. In the early 1980s, not only in Ohio, but across the country, we struggled with competition from parts of Europe and lots of the Pacific Rim. And your Congress, through the Senate and the House, developed a thing called the Manufacturing Studies Board, in which they looked at how can our automobile industry, our telecommunications industry, our burgeoning infrastructure for information industries be more competitive with the likes of Germany, France, and Japan. That's significant because they were beating us not at inventing and new ideas, but in how they applied those inventions and new ideas to their marketplaces. And it started with a simple three-letter abbreviation, SPC, Statistical Process Control. From that time, the state of Ohio has become a national leader in the application of detailed and accurate measurements across all industries. I say that to you because in the invention world, if you create a product, it's going to fall under some form of measurement and standards and rules and policies that are traced back to the National Bureau of Standards, which is now the National Institute for Information and Technology. We as a state of Ohio are leaders in that whole world. We didn't get to be leaders because somebody clicked their finger. We got to be leaders because as far back as the aviation start in Dayton, Ohio, through the Wright brothers, was connected to really smart people. We had a Department of Defense infrastructure throughout the country in the early 80s, in the 70s, in the 40s, in the 30s, all the way back to the early 1800s, when we had departments of war, we had departments of health, we had departments of transportation, all focused on can the federal and state governments bring new products to the marketplace through private companies. So what ended up happening from the 1800s until the mid 1980s was the development of disparate parts of an economic development infrastructure. Today, in my profession, we call this a technology-based economic development world. Mike, Chaz, and many others throughout the state of Ohio have long been leaders in the management side of technology commercialization, tapping into the engineering and the invention side of technology commercialization in this thing called technology-based economic development. You may be old enough to remember that the license plates on the state of Ohio used to say the heart of it all. Now they say the birthplace of aviation. We're in competition with North Carolina. We can compete all day long on those kinds of things. You may be familiar, maybe you're in Columbus, maybe you're from other part of the state, but our Department of Agriculture at the Ohio State University is renowned for its inventing, organizing, and deploying technology into the agricultural industry. You may also be aware that the Ohio State University is also renowned for its inventing, organizing, and commercializing information-based technology in the digital world. They were the first to do digital graphics movies through Pixar right at Ohio State University. So when we take an agricultural industry, hundreds and hundreds of years old, up to a graphic industry, which is very burgeoning today, not just in Ohio, not just in the entertainment world, but in all kinds of other industries like this activity, this Zoom meetings, Ohio was a birthplace for all of that. I'd like to tell a little story about something that happened in the early 1970s in Dayton, Ohio. Two inventors at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base base determined they had an algorithm that was pretty neat. It could do fun things. And so they played little games on it in their offices at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, in talking to the administration in Dayton and then in the Department of Defense in Washington. They determined that it was worthy of intellectual property. The algorithm became the base for what is now today a worldwide gaming industry. You may remember Pong, you may remember simple games like that, all the way up to what we have today. A change in Ohio in the early 1980s recognized that that technology was created by our federal government, living in Dayton, Ohio, in Ohio, by Ohio citizens, but anybody had the rights to it. And so the commercialization of that product, that invention, ended up being based in Japan. I like to tell a story about a little game called the Wii, W-I-I. The reason for the two letters I instead of the letter E is that the creators of that game wanted it to sound like we as a cooperative and indicate individuals. So that W means W, individual, individual. That's kind of hard to pronounce, but so we call it the we. If there are 75 or 76 of us on this conference Zoom call today, we are a part of a W and 75 or 76 I's. You have Mike as a part of your I, you have each other as a part of your I, because invention of a product or invention of a process is a contact sport. You have to be connected to many, many people. Chaz Fertel, Mike Bowers, and many other around this state are so good and so adept at interfacing you with other people that can help you as your needs evolve through time. That's why this matrix has become a neat product for us to talk about. It actually grew out of an intellectual property firm in California. And then over years, we've modified it many, many, many times. It's simple to use. If you can remember, it's not like reading a book. And so if we could look at the matrix now, and I'll talk you through that, why it's not like reading a book.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the matrix up on the screen. And Jeff, when you jump in here, and I know how this flows, but let's start with kind of general terms. What people need to think about. They have the big idea. This is going to be a fantastic invention. It's going to make trillions of dollars, all of that. But they're still at that big idea phase. So as we work through the document, kind of start out with that piece, where they are and what they need to be thinking about at that point, and then how they kind of flow through. So let me throw this up here. All right, see that okay?
Perfect.
All right. So yeah, let's kind of walk through here.
I'd ask you to not read anything at the moment. I know you're scanning it, but please don't concentrate on anything right now. What I'd like you to listen to for just a moment is the planning of your budget is as important as the planning of your time. And experts in technology commercialization have said most of our companies, most of our inventors don't recognize there's a thing called the valley of death in starting a business. I like to use the valley of death, and if you want to, you can go Google it. It's in many academic papers. It shows a valley of expenditures that occur for many long months sometimes before you get to a break-even point in your company. So even before you start, I'd like you to remember, if you're a individual now working in your home or in your garage or in your basement or in the backyard like I am, you'll need to think about my tax obligation, your tax obligation, as regards to how you collect information about your time and money spent on your business. Most of the time, that's a little bit confusing for people to understand that part of it. So start with the simple. We all have our social security number. So you have your social security number as a place to do all of your taxes from. Or you may be in a business right now and you have a business identification number, but you're going to take your new invention and jump out of that business and go on your own and maybe start a company. Always start with two critical numbers, one or the other, your social security number, so that you can file taxes under a Schedule C. Mike and his team can help you see that, to know all of your expenses. Knowing what your costs are the root of understanding your business all the way through. So either your social security number, and you can operate as a sole proprietorship. Moving forward, you may want to build a limited liability company, an S Corp, a C Corp, doesn't matter. Or if you're in an existing company, you know that you have an employee identification number, using that as your baseline for starting to track costs. So in that creation of information about the product, the development strategy, and moving into the valley of death, now I'd like you to look at this matrix. We call it a roadmap, and you'll recognize the left-hand side of it talks about a development phase, and then the right-hand side talks about a launch phase up in the blue letters. So columns 1 through 5 are development size activities, and columns 6 through 10 are deployment or launch activities. Where people make a mistake is they start in the upper left-hand corner under the green arrow number 1, and they answer those questions, and then they move over to number 2, and then they move over to number 3, much like we read a book. That's not how this should be worked. The reason it shouldn't be worked that way relates to something that Mike and Chaz both referred to. They're a central point of resource to help you find answers that you may not have inherent in your own experience, knowledge, education, or network that's helping you build it. So as we look at square number 1, on the left-hand side, you'll see that the column says inventing and innovation, and we're going to look at, you have an idea, made a discovery, now you have to take some action. The first action you should think about is starting to build a network. I talk a lot with the inventor community in the very young world. I'm a part of the Ohio Academy of Sciences, talking with youth inventors from 9th grade up to high school. And then I work with a lot of colleges and universities from their, even between high school and their first year of college, all the way up through what can be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of college, depending on the kind of degree they're pursuing. What we'd like to have people recognize right at the front, you can't be alone. If you think you're going to bootstrap yourself into a business, you're more likely to spend a lot more money than you ever make. So at column 1, first square at the top, start to build names of people who might help. Start with Chaz Fertel, start with Mike Bowers, start with Bruce, and get that list started. When a person graduates from a business college and they get a business degree, probably one of the first classes they take, someone says, remember to build your network. This is what that is. And you organize your networks based on what your needs are going to be, and they're not going to stay the same. In commercializing a technology, because we don't do it alone, and we have to have a lot of people help us, I try to put my networks into 3 different categories first. Number 1, who can help me with the invention in the creativity side of it? Who has created something similar? Who has an interest in being just daydreaming like I might on a product? So that's the science and the creativity side of your network. Start there. Second is start to network with how you might finance this project. Always, we start with companies, and there's a standard line in our industry. Mike knows this well. We talk about the 3 and the 4 F's. First F is family. Second F is friends. Third F is financing from banks. And the fourth F is fools. So if you get to that fourth F, you might think about, did I do something right? Because I haven't convinced everybody along the way. And if you only get financing from your friends, they're liking your product because they like you, not because your product's perfect for the marketplace. Your product could be horrible for the marketplace. So starting a business, as Mike wanted to focus on, when do you start? Start by getting your data right in the very beginning. Using timesheets or a log, list how many hours a day you think about it, you do research on it, you buy products, whatever it is. Keep a log of that information so that your entire expenses are recognized in your tax forms, private or business tax forms, so you understand the valley of death. Let's move down from the top on number one to the intellectual property side. If there were 30 intellectual property lawyers on this event, we would hear 30 intellectual property conversations. The intellectual property has to match your product, so it's an ongoing activity. I'll mention this to you because some of the people I consult with are individuals whose intellectual product is an intellectual item. Because we're in Columbus or anywhere where there's an academic institution, we know that in the past 2 years, the intellectual property law has changed around name, image, and likeness, NIL. An athlete can help choose an academic institution that they want to go to because they feel they're good enough to protect and sell their name, image, and likeness. That's changed the intellectual property world dramatically at all academic institutions. And then there are people who are creating a product that's not those three rather intangible activities, but they're making something durable, tangible that they can touch. It can be a product or a process. And then lastly, there are agricultural products that are a part of nature that cannot be patented, but the process of using those and improving those all can be patented and protected. So in that same question of column one, number two, intellectual property, you'll see as you read that, it's learn about intellectual property, patents, and other types of protection. I've given you a quick primer on that, but there's so much to read. And as I said, 35 patent attorneys will give you 35 different versions of what's the right thing to do. You take that information from your patent attorney and you come back into your network, which you started to build on number one, and say, does anybody know anybody else who has a patent like this? Hey, Mike, have you seen this? Hey, Chaz, have you seen that? Mike and Chaz and others will go through their networks and say, oh, yeah, this, oh, no, that, and help coach you through that. Let's drop down to the next one, manufacturing. Not everything we make is going to be manufactured. It may be that it's an intangible product and just needs to be produced out and sold as an intellectual body of information. So the word manufacturing is a little bit of a misnomer, but we leave it there anyway. And if you'll read that block, explore the various kinds of manufacturing processes. There are several for each different, and limitations are enormous. If you're not a person who's been educated in engineering of some kind, but you're only educated in finance and your product has to have manufacturing, your network of people that you started to build in block one should have some engineering talent who can help you talk about the laws of physics, who can help you understand whether fluid dynamics apply, whether electronics apply, whether mechanical engineering applies. Those are very important parts of the invention and commercialization process. At the bottom then, in marketing, it says, learn the marketing essentials for this invention. I'll give you an example of a basic. We've done nothing in column one that costs a lot of money. We've done things that do take time and organization. Gathering data, writing data down, learning what blocks you should put it in so that it's available for you to think about. In the marketing side, marketing is not just sales. Marketing is the research that lead to sales. Marketing is the development of materials that help you make sales. But more importantly, it's the research side. In fact, I can argue that this entire matrix is a marketing activity because it helps you organize how you move forward to making expenditures and making investments. So we started to read from column 1 all the way down through 4 different blocks. That's why it's not like a book. I've had people come to me and say, hey, Jeff, I'm done. I finished all the way over to column 5. What do I do down here in intellectual property? I said, throw everything away that you did, because you need to come back and work them in a column to make it easier to stay in touch with what's happening next and what you just completed. I had one inventor who had this first conversation with me that I'm having with you now. He said, oh yeah, I got this. I have this, no problem. He was in the transportation industry, had a really innovative idea for motorcycles. And he left my office convinced that he had this all understood. And I said, okay, I'll see you soon. 3 months went by, 4 months went by, never saw him. I thought, well, he's gone. Never going to see him again. Called me one day and said, I want to come back in and talk about the matrix with you. Okay. He had moved from column 1 to column 2 to column 3, and he had a question down in column 3 that he wanted to verify with me the answers he had received through his networks. And so all he was doing was checking in to say, hey, I'm working this by the columns like you asked. I'm over to column 3. This one bugs me a little bit. What did I provide? Not great knowledge. I provided him access to an additional network, other people he had not met yet. Off he goes again, disappears. 2 or 3, 4 months go by, comes back in, and he's all the way over in column 8 and 9. And same thing, a question that he had, he couldn't understand. He wanted to get a little further in it. Did I have any ideas there? Another 2 or 3 months go by, and he called me up one morning. He said, you know what I'm doing tomorrow, Jeff? What are you doing? He said, I'm driving to Indianapolis with my brand new product. I'm going to be the only one of my kind in a transportation show in Indianapolis. And don't you know, he was the smash of the show because he hit the market and no one knew he was coming. You see, there were competing products in the marketplace already for what he did. And he didn't want anybody to know what he was doing until he was ready to make a big splash. He hadn't planned on being a manufacturer all of his life. He wanted to make his product so complete, so ready to go that someone could buy his intellectual property and all the supply chain he had already locked up. And they could take his product and commercialize it themselves. An already existing competitor in the business bought his idea and they were ready to go. That's the kind of success story that I just love. It was such a cool success story that even the Small Business Administration in Chicago, which oversees 10 states, got wind of it, was all excited. In Indianapolis, she went to interview the guy, then came to Ohio to interview Mike and me. We got more wind out of it than he did. I think it was kind of fun. Those things will happen. Most of that time.
Jeff, let me ask you a question here real quick as we go through here. So what I'm hearing a lot of is, one, I like the idea, let's do stuff that doesn't cost a lot of money, because we've both seen individuals that have dumped money into patents and prototypes. They have no idea what they're going to do with it, anything like that. I don't want to go into it. I remember one of my favorite stories for Jeff is that we had an individual that had a check that they were going to put in the mailbox to, was it Invent Help?
Yes.
For like $5,000, and you were able to get that stopped because they were just basically throwing money out before they really knew what they were doing. And I think that one of the things that I think folks really need to think about is understanding, again, what the market is, what it is you're talking about doing, who does it appeal to? We talk about this all the time with businesses, but with inventors, it's the same deal, because they need to really think about okay, I have this idea. May even have a homemade prototype. All right, what's going to happen to it? Where am I going to go with it? I mean, I like the idea. I mean, I love the story about kind of moving it down the pipe and somebody else buying it and taking it. This is not even a licensing play, and it's not creating a business where you have to create distribution and everything. And I don't think a lot of inventors, a lot of entrepreneurs in that space, I don't think they think about that. They just think, I've got this, you know, people are going to buy it, but they don't think about, okay, well, maybe they will buy it, but how am I going to get them to buy it? And what do I got to do to get them to buy it? And
very good
process.
points, Mike. That's true. If you're an inventor of any kind or a daydreamer of any kind, you've stayed awake all night watching television. And even now during the day, you'll see these ads for, it used to be called the Invention Submission Corporation out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then they have places all around the country. There is a derivative of that company not more than 2 miles from me right now. That company's whole business model is taking inventors' money and producing back out to the inventor everything the inventor can get for free already in market research from the internet. And then they'll also tell you, you're going to need drawings. We can do that for you too. And so they'll charge you an exorbitant amount of money to make the drawings up, which is simply CAD work. That can be done at almost any high school. Every community college has expertise in computer-aided design or drawing, and really sophisticated products might need a higher level at a university or through a federal laboratory, but it doesn't need to happen through a company like Invention. There's a funny little story in Ohio. We used to be the home of the United States Inventors Hall of Fame. There was a fellow down in Athens, Ohio, who did not think that the Invention Submission Corporation was doing anybody any favors. So they sued in the Department of Commerce, and the state of Ohio is responsible for a junction against that company of $100 million, saying they had to reduce their prices going forward until they consumed $100 million of reduction in prices because of how they had cheated inventors for years going by. Help inventors now, and all those are still a part of that family. Those are derivatives of that. Where I think is another place to consider on the intellectual property is what Mike likes to talk about too, and I know Chaz uses similar things. There are 2 documents that you can create yourself called a non-disclosure agreement and a non-compete agreement. That can be your very first place for intellectual property work in column number 1. Taking a picture or writing a story down and mailing it to yourself does nothing. Don't do it. It's a waste of a stamp. And now stamps are pretty expensive. So don't do that. Research and write up a non-disclosure and non-compete agreement that can actually fit on one postcard. You could have everybody you talk to sign that postcard. I personally have a preference that brevity is beauty in this case. If I come across an individual who I want to be a resource to me, I say, I'd love to talk to you about my invention, but I have a non-disclosure, non-compete agreement. Would you mind signing it? Most of the time, they're going to say yes. So I hand them the card. It has 2 sentences on it that describes why I want them and what I want them to not disclose and what non-compete means to me. I don't even put a date on it. If I don't put a date on it and they sign it, that non-disclosure agreement lasts in perpetuity until they negotiate a shorter date. Now, most sophisticated business consultants and engineers will say, well, I won't sign that because it doesn't have an end date. Well, why would you need an end date? I might say to them, well, because the market's changing all the time. This will be obsolete. I'm not going to put myself in a place where I can't compete in a similar industry because of this little postcard you have, which is fine. I get that. And we can negotiate more strict and reasonable non-disclosure, non-compete facts underneath a non-disclosure agreement if I really value their input. I also use that postcard idea if I'm taking an idea that may be a product directly to the marketplace and I'm not going to sell it to another producer or a manufacturer. because I'd like to get real-time client information. I have an example of a client who had a product that was going to compete in the pet control and pet walking industry. And I had seen similar products like that. And she said, no, you haven't. Okay. Yes, I have. So I asked her to get on her computer, go on Google with me at the same time, go up to a Google search screen and type in the name of the product that she thinks she has. And don't look at the first column that says all, move over to where it says images, click on images, and let's just scan through all of the pictures. Lo and behold, we had to get 5 or 6 pages deep till there was one that was kind of similar to what she wanted to do. I said, okay, so now how are you different from that? And then she had a pretty good description of why she was different from that. So I asked her, is she willing to put together a postcard, go to that Google image, find the company that sells it, find out where they sell it, and go stand outside of the door where people are buying it and ask them, if the product you just bought had this additional feature, would you like it more? Simple question. Real life customer information that allowed her to understand the differentiator in her product. She made her way across that matrix all the way over to column 8. And then she found out that it wasn't smart for her to do. She loved it. She was in love with this product from column 1 all the way up to the middle of column 8. And then she said, you know what this matrix helped me do, Jeff? It helped me realize my beautiful product isn't pretty in the marketplace. It's never going to sell. And so she didn't spend a lot of money, but she got to a place where she told herself no, because there weren't enough customers saying they would buy it. There wasn't a big enough differentiator. So she went on to make a new product, invent something different.
Okay. Jeff, let me ask you this. So I think that's huge, because there was actually a question in the chat about the non-disclosures. And I think that one of the things we used to talk about a lot is that a lot of people would say, okay, I need a non-disclosure, but they always forget about the non-compete part. So, okay, they cannot disclose it, but I mean, making sure that they don't come in and take it and compete directly against you. So that's another thing. I don't want to go into detail with it, but there's 2 pieces to that people need to think about. So as you're kind of dealing with your network, you're kind of early in the process, and you're kind of working through this. How do you kind of tiptoe along this public disclosure piece? Because again, if they start going out and they start publicly disclosing things, they start doing things, they could get into a situation where intellectual property is not going to be, you're not going to be able to do intellectual property. I mean, they've talked to too many people, they've done too much without proper safeguards in place. So you want to touch on that real quick?
That's so important. If you'll recall, I started out by using the example of name, image, and likeness. That's an easy yet complicated issue for these young people who are athletes, who are very successful, and their whole brain is not on intellectual property. Many of them are getting scammed by, I'm not going to say intentionally scammed, but they're getting scammed because other people are going to make more money on their invention, on their intellectual property of name, image, and likeness than they will. That happens. In the intellectual property space and the non-disclosure space, as we move over to patents, where it's easier to describe a tangible product, or in the plant and process world, it's easier to describe an outcome of the process, you can do an interim step in the patent process so that it's not a full patent. Preliminary patent can get you up to 2 years of protection. It secures your date in time that says, I invented this, and it's different because ABC. From that date forward, you can even make changes in that preliminary patent process to the patent itself, because you learn what are the real disclosures. And up to 2 years later, you can adjust and change your patent and make what are called claims to what you have determined are special to you. They're unique and novel. And you invented them. You didn't steal them from somebody else. That allows you to get intellectual property protection for several years before you move to a full patent process. The full patent process can be pretty expensive, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. I have one customer right now, our friend I'm working with, I guess I would say, whose intellectual property expenses are in the tens of thousands of dollars. Because that product is in the medical industry, it's subject to highly detailed regulations and highly detailed specificities. And we talked about the National Bureau of Standards or NTIS standards now. This is subject to standards that are so precise because it goes inside of the brain. So putting things inside of a human body requires so much intellectual property protection because of the regulatory environment it sits within. So his intellectual property journey will never stop, but so far it's consumed more than $35,000 of his money. He's willing to do that because the market is billions of dollars in potential sales. So even though his valley of death on intellectual property before any sales has $35,000 in debt, plus all of his time, all of his touchable product design and development, he's not even moved towards sales yet, but he knows there's $1 billion plus market out there. He'll make that break-even point, but his intellectual property strategy was very simple. He came to me first and said, I'm going to tell you a secret. Can you keep a secret? Yes, I can. Mike, me, Chaz, we're all under protection from people looking at our files and asking, what are our clients doing? Even the governor or the president of the governor of a state or president of this country could not come in and look at Mike Bauer's files and say, I want to see what this intellectual property is, or what's the secret to this. They're not allowed to see it. And an interesting point is Ohio was the very first place in the country that had that kind of protection for inventors. And then the federal government liked what they saw in our protections, and now that's nationwide protection.
Okay, let me ask you another question here real quick. So so you mentioned, I got one question, one comment. So you mentioned this disclosure. So if there is ever a question of I invented something and somebody else invented something, I can't remember, they switched it a couple of years ago. It's now is date of invention or date of disclosure. They switched that a couple of years ago, didn't it?
Yes, it's first to file.
First to file. Okay.
Right. So that's why it's to your advantage to understand the intellectual property and the filing process, starting with preliminary patent information that gives you a date and time. If you've had your non-disclosure cards, you'll have to document that you invented it first. That's important in a court of law, but it's not going to be the final, because another person who says, I invented it, they can file before you file, at which point they win, because that's the international standard. We are subject to international treaties on tariffs and trades. The international law says the first to file is the person who gets the rights to the invention. So protecting one's information, you have to be careful on it.
Right.
Many of the consumer-to-consumer products that we see, it's not that big of an issue. It's if you have a process product, something that will improve industry and how industry operates, we pay very close attention to the protection of that information. We ask you to learn to keep it secret. We ask you not to over disclose it to any scientific competitors or any engineering competitors before you get enough information to make a formal intellectual property application. And that can be to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, or even to the Department or to the United States Library of Congress with regard to copyright. And those are pretty important details.
Yes. So I want to make a quick point. So when we talk about intellectual property, I think a lot of times people get into, we're talking about patents, and we're not always talking about patents. Patents are part of the process, but to be honest with you, there's certain things that really aren't patentable. You know, they're still inventions. They still can go to market. They can do different things, but it's really doesn't have enough meat to be able to do that. So there's other components to intellectual property where we're talking about trademarks, and you just mentioned copyrights, and trade secrets. You know, it's like, you know, we're not going to disclose how we're doing different things. And those are intellectual property strategies that I don't think a lot of people think about. And when they do think about patents, and again, you taught me this years ago, you know, you can get a patent and you can have a great patent, but how much money do you have to defend it? I mean, you know, if IBM comes in and they like what they saw in your patent, they say, okay, well, we have a lot of money, we have a lot of lawyers, we're just going to do it anyway. I mean, they can push it down, and you don't have enough money to go fight them sometimes. So the patent's only as good. The patent's only as good as your ability to defend it.
And embedded in that ability to defend it is your strategy for your patent and your sales of your product. I love to tell these two little stories. I'll ask the group to say to themselves, would I have made more money if I was the inventor of the hula hoop or the pet rock? Now it's more fun to do this when we're all in one room, because I can ask people to raise their hands, and now I won't know if you raised your hand or not. But if you said the hula hoop's been around forever, that has to have made an awful lot of money, I'll bet that was the thing that made the highest amount of revenue for the inventor themselves. And the pet rock is just a rock. How could that have made any money? It was the intellectual property strategy of the two products that told the whole story. The inventor of the hula hoop went through a normal process and got a very good patent. It was a pretty simple patent when you think about it. If you take a plastic hose and you bend it enough till it comes back together, you stick in a little dowel rod, put a staple on either end. Not very complicated. He did it, got the patent. It was awarded. It was no problem. No one ever violated that patent. But he sold his rights to that patent to a company that started manufacturing them. And he was so convinced that that product was going to be on the market forever and selling endlessly that he asked them for a lump sum payment and a royalty above that, a number of sales. And he saw his trajectory going up almost like a hockey stick, which we love to see in technology-based economic development. The company who bought his product lowered their market work and never topped out to where he would get a royalty. So he only got $10,000 for his patent, and he didn't have any clawback rights in the patent agreement and the commercialization agreement he had signed. So he could not go back to them and claw it back and say, I deserve more money. $10,000, all he got for the invention. Now, the pet rock's a whole different story, because you can't patent a rock. It's a body of nature. All these fellas did at Pet Rock was pick it up and package it smart. Their only intellectual property was on the copyright trademark side of their product. Where the fellow was a genius is amazing, because it started out as a bet between two fellas at an airport. Said, I'll buy you a beer if you can outsell me on a product, and you buy me a beer if I can outsell you. And the one fellow said, fine, pick a product. He said, how about a rock? Great. So the guy took a rock and called it Pet Rock in his brain. And he determined that if I copyright all of the reasons people want to buy, a child wants a pet rock because they just want a pet rock. A child's sibling wants a pet rock because they want to give a present to the child. Inexpensive, it's cool, it's kind of neat, it's novel, it's not very expensive to do. Mom and dad want to buy a pet rock for a child because they want to condition the child to have a real pet. So learn about food, learn about care, learn about loving and tenderness. All of those kinds of sales techniques were copyrighted in the material that marketed and traveled with the product from the factory to the customer, including, as I said, siblings, parents, aunts and uncles, neighbors, grandparents. That fellow in 2 years made millions of dollars. Hula hoop, $10,000, pet rock, millions of dollars, because the strategy for intellectual property was not so good in one and very good in another.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point. That's a great story. For those of you who don't remember, the key is, like Jeff said, this pet rock back in the 70s, they just were selling a rock. You put it in a box and they sold the rock and people bought it. I mean, it's one of those kind of flash in the pan, just like, you know, everybody wants it and things like that, kind of novelty, and, you know, flamed really hot for a relatively short amount of time and then went away. But that's okay, because he made all his money in that short flaming window of time. So, you know, but Jeff's point about the intellectual property strategy is really important. And there are ways, I think, if you walk away with this, nothing else, is to understand that there are more ways than just patents. Now, we've got the product commercialization roadmap, which you all see here. Again, if you did not see it or did not get it, be sure that you either put in the chat to Bruce your contact information, or email Bruce. And I think it's just bwalters@cscc.edu. You should have got an email from him prior to this, and we'll make sure that you get this. And I think that it's a great tool. And again, it's not a book. It's not left to right, things like that. It's like, I'm doing this much in this one. You know, I'm doing this on my intellectual property at this point. Now I'm also looking into the manufacturers, doing research, and all of these types of things. So that's how it kind of flows. And it's important that you take a look at that. And like I said, if you don't have it, go ahead and let us know, because I think it's going to be it's important for you there. And we've had some good comments on it. So Jeff, we're actually at time, and
Okay.
I want to give you just a minute. So keep it, to, short amount of time. If you are going to give them kind of one tip. So I imagine a lot of people that are on here, they have an idea, or they have some sort of, maybe it's a homemade prototype, or maybe they've started down the road kind of trying to figure out the manufacturing process, whatever, which again, it's all in that chart. So, print that off and look at it. What's kind of one thing that you recommend that they think about, kind of where they are now? What do you want to leave them with?
In all of my experience in technology commercialization, the thing I've learned the most is it's a body contact sport. I have to have people near me and around me, because a really good inventor and a creative mind thinks they know it all. You don't. Trust the fact that other people can be brought into it, and use an intermediary community. Mike as a public sector intermediary, lawyers as a legal intermediary, other government agencies, other universities, as long as you have good strategies. You can't do it alone, so don't try. The concept of bootstrapping has never happened. Something has always been there. If I was the first inventor in the world, my knowledge came from my parents, so I didn't do it alone. So you're never going to do it alone now. Don't think you can do it alone today.
Yeah.
Find support, get a team, stay with the team. Trust that people like Mike and Chaz are confidential and really well connected. And then I'd say watch costs. I personally am a real believer that the most egregious four-letter word in business is cost, because people don't know what it is. They don't know how to track it. They can't manage it. And then therefore they can't price. If you don't know cost, you cannot price your product.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so thank you. There's a point in here in the chat, looking for us to kind of do some more of these types of things and things like that. We will be doing that through the SBDC. We're going to be doing some additional kind of trainings around this, some additional trainings around IP, manufacturing, all of these types of things. I've got some other folks that I'm familiar with that we're going to bring into the process. So this will be happening. Keep an eye on your SBDC email. If you're not on our mailing list, which you probably are, if you're not on our mailing list, or if you're not confirmed to following our events, be sure to do that. Go to our website, which is sbdccolumbus.com, and you can sign up for the mailing list. And so you can stay on top of what we're working on. But like I said, we're gonna be doing this because I know that I get a lot of questions on this. I know Chaz gets a lot of questions on this, and it's going to be really valuable, I think, to the individuals that are kind of working through that, because our philosophy on training, again, is this lets you learn a lot. I mean, we learned a lot today that if we tried to do this one-on-one would take weeks. So that's the kind of thing that we want to do. So Jeff, thank you for jumping in here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Again, thanks for everything that you've done, for us and the SBDC and for the inventors and manufacturing space over the years, and that you continue to do.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Jeff will be sharing some information with Bruce. Bruce will be emailing it out to the individuals that were here. That'll include Jeff's contact information and different things like that. So if you do want to talk to Jeff about some things that you're working on, he will be sharing that. So you should have that sometime by either later this week or early next week. So we are really happy, Jeff, again, that you jumped on with us here today. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing.
Well, you're welcome, Mike. Thank you. It's always an honor to be around you, one of the leaders in technology-based economic development. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. So again, thank you to everyone who jumped on here today. We look forward to you guys jumping on with us every month. So we do have the special Small Business Breakthrough and the Small Business Spotlights next week in Small Business Week. Also on the 4th Thursday of May, I believe that is the 25th. We'll have our next Small Business Breakthrough, where we'll be hearing from some entrepreneurs and some individuals that went through the 10,000 Small Business training program that Goldman Sachs sponsors through Columbus State. So we did this last year. It was a big hit. We brought in some of those entrepreneurs, and they shared some really great and really cool stories. So that'll be the next Small Business Breakthrough at the end of May. And of course, like I said, we have the special editions next week for Small Business Week. So thank you guys for being here. Look forward to engaging with you in the future. We obviously look forward to continuing to engage with the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center and all the really great things that you've got going on here. And we look forward to helping you in the future and seeing you very soon. Thank you very much.